Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Metagame, the live streaming show right here on the Dice Towers YouTube channel, where we not only talk about board games, but sometimes talk about talking about board games, what it means to be a media maker, hence the meta version of that topic. I am your host, as always, Chaz Marler, but again, as always, I'm not doing this alone, because I am joined by the live streaming YouTube chat window over to my right, full of show regulars and hopefully new people joining us today, because what we're going to be doing in this programming is I'm going to present a topic, give my thoughts on that topic and set the stage for discussion, and then turn things over to the YouTube chat for that discussion. And so if you are watching along at home right now while this is going on, and you have something that you want to add to the YouTube chat, make sure to go ahead and post your questions, your comments, whatever comes to mind. But when you do so, be sure to add the hashtag TMG for the metagame. And because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my web browser's fantastically magical search tool. I'm going to search the comments for that hashtag, which is going to make them highlight and pop up to the top. So I will see the comments that have that hashtag far easier. That will bring them to my attention. So that is how to participate in the discussion. Speaking of which, I guess we'll need a topic. And today's topic is, I'd buy that for $1. And what made me think of this topic was the fact that there's a Kickstarter campaign going on right now. And every now and then, Kickstarter campaign comes along that just completely defies logical description. Something about it clicks and it raises a whole bunch of moolah, which is always exciting to see, especially when it's a Kickstarter in the board game industry. Specifically, just within the last few days, the company Kingdom Death has created not even a new game, not even a second edition. They've done something I've never seen before. They have started a Kickstarter for what they are calling version 1.5 of their flagship product, Kingdom Death Monster. Now, I got my technology going on here. So here we go. Oh, got my window. Hey, it is meta. There's the window of our conversation, in our conversation. So Kingdom Death Monster 1.5 currently has 29 days to go. But their Kickstarter campaign for this version of their RPG-ish board game, miniatures game, has 14,378 backers, pledging a total of over $7.2 million for this campaign, with still nearly a month to go. And my question that this made me wonder is, why? What is it about this campaign that has people's attention and has them scrambling for their wallets to back this campaign? Because this is not a typical board game on Kickstarter. And before I go any further, of course, full disclosure, this is not meant to be an advertisement for Kingdom Death Monster. It's just news and something, and we're going to be talking about other games as well, but it's kind of the crux of our conversation. But I don't want this to come across as an endorsement one way or the other for this game. It's just something that I want to talk about, and I just happened to have an internet connection follow me home today, and so here we are. Back to the conversation, though. So what is it that makes people back this? Because there's two interesting things about this. One, this is not an inexpensive game. The base game is at the $250 pledge level. $250 is the buy-in to, and shipping is not even included in that. $250 is the buy-in to get all the stretch goals and upgrades for the Kingdom Death Monster core game version 1.5, which with an estimated delivery of December 2020. So here we have a game that's like 4 years away even. It's a very high buy-in at $250. It's 4 years away. So why are people, it's a very high price point. Why are people backing this? And one of the reasons why, well, there's a few reasons, but one of them I wanted to show is probably has something to do with this. Here is an example of one of the sculpts in the game. And the detail on this is just amazing. I don't know if I can actually zoom in on this picture. Maybe a little. The detail on these is just amazing. And I know our internet connection for this program is usually kind of low res, so I apologize. We're not going to be able to see all the fantastic detail in this thing. But they are the feathers in these wings. They're really nice, detailed, imaginative sculpts. So that, I think that is part of it. And another part of it is actually something that I think I already saw mentioned in the YouTube chat. So before I go into details about that, I'm going to wait till we hit the YouTube chat, and I'll address it when it comes to that point. And before we go back to the chat, though, to talk about initial thoughts on this, just in case, I'm sorry, I glossed over this completely, just in case you don't know at all what Kingdom Death Monster is all about, just a quick overview. Kingdom Death Monster is a massive cooperative board game about survival. You have your own kind of clans that you you start, and they grow over time. And I believe that there's continuity from one game to the next. So you will, your civilization will grow, and your clan will gain things that they will retain. But it's kind of a nightmare horror world, as they describe it. It's kind of gruesome. It's definitely not safe for work type of stuff on some of the cards and themes that are in the game. But survivors will fight for their lives against an onslaught of bizarre and fearsome creatures. And they will use the fruits of these battles to build a fragile civilization in a place where humans are the bottom of a monstrous ecology. So, yep, people are the bottom of the food chain. Okay, let me put this away for a minute. Hi. All right, so initial questions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop into what we initially have in the chat up to this point and touch on those until we kind of catch up. And we will, in the chat, we will see people's initial reactions to the topic in Kingdom Death Monster, and then we'll kind of go from there to the next stuff on this topic. Some of it will be a mystery that we'll get to in a moment. Okay, so let me go to my chat window and highlight my chat. Looks like we have 24 comments so far. All right. And returning viewer, Prehawk, starts off our chat with the item that I think is the other reason why Kingdom Death Monster is pulling in the funds that it is. He mentions... the only way that I would buy from a Kickstarter is if the company has done it before and did it right. And I think that is a very valid point. I think that is part of why Kingdom Death Monster is pulling in what it is. Because I just happen to have, back in this same window, here we have the current Kickstarter project. There it is for version 1.5. I also looked up the original Kingdom Death Monster, which came out in, I believe the Kickstarter was launched in November of 2012, and then the game itself came out a year later. And as you can see, where'd they go? There we go. 5,410 backers raised a little over 2 million for this version of the game. Sorry. Get that out of the way. 5,400 people raised 2 million for this one, and this was their initial offering. This is what they did first. So that history, I think, and the fantastic performance that their original Kickstarter campaign had, kind of set the stage to show people that, yeah, they know what they're doing and they can produce a good Kickstarter. And I think that their previous project is one of the things that has helped spur this one towards the success that it is seeing. Definitely. So I'm wondering too, just like Preyhawk mentioned, does a company's history on Kickstarter, how much does that affect how willing you are to back their current Kickstarter campaigns? I mean, in this example, we see that it really apparently seems to have an effect on if people are going to back it, because this isn't even a different game or second edition of the game. This is just version 1.5, kind of a small update, or maybe a large update, but basically it's version 1.5 of this already existing game that's already run a Kickstarter campaign, and people are backing it hand over fist. So I was curious how much of a company's history, how much does that have an effect? Because I mentioned before on previous episodes, I'm not a huge Kickstarter guy. I've probably kickstarted half a dozen different things, board games and stuff on Kickstarter. So I know comparatively to a lot of other people, board gamers, that's pretty low amount of things. Now, that's not to say I don't pre-order or do other things, but Kickstarter itself, I'm not a huge Kickstarterist. So the discussion that you guys are going to have here with me is going to be somewhat of an education for myself as well. So that's going to make this, I'm not coming into this discussion as the quote-unquote expert or someone that has some big point they're trying to make. This is an episode that really is a discussion. And to have a discussion, you got to go back to the people you're discussing with. So let's go back to the chat here. Bob mentions... Bob mentions that he was considering buying Jumbo Jet at a secondhand store today, but he is yet to find a gem in a secondhand store. Okay. I'm going to table that for a minute, because thrift store stuff is likely going to be the dedicated focus of an upcoming episode real soon. And the difficulty in finding gems. But let's get back. Kabuki Kid joins us once again, as always, to mention that I'm with Preyhawk. I generally only go with experienced publishers on Kickstarter anymore. And I think that anymore is a really key word that I'm going to come back to in a minute. I also have a hard time kicking a game I know very little about. Ooh, kicking a game. Is that the phrase that Kickstarter regulars use instead of backing? Am I out of touch? Because I still call it backing. Let's continue with what your comment said. I need a lot of info up front. I never go... sorry, that was another comment there. So, to recap what Kabuki Kid was trying to say that I did a horrible job of reading to everyone here is basically... Kabuki Kid is at the point where she only goes with experienced publishers on Kickstarter anymore. And that anymore suggests that this was not always the case, which I find very interesting. And if that is correct, and that is not always the case, that didn't used to always be the case, Kabuki Kid, please tell us, what was the turning point? What was it that made you start to generally only go with experienced publishers? Was it an experience that you had with a poorly run Kickstarter? Was it just the amount of games that are now available to choose from on Kickstarter? What is it that changed that so that you only go with them experienced publishers anymore? Let me know, and we'll sift our way down to that comment, and I'll revisit that when I see your follow-up. I'd love to see anything you have to say on that. Okay, Bob joins us to mention that I was considering backing Kingdom Death Monster, but I really wonder if it's more than just pretty things. Is there a game in the box? Excellent question. And I can only speak from my limited experience. I have not sat down and played a game of Kingdom Death Monster. However, I have several close friends that have played it multiple times that have described to me in great detail how the game works. And also have another a friend from that I know in town that has actually brought a copy of it over on another game night. It wasn't scheduled to be the game that we played, but he did open it up and we looked through all the minis and all the components. He was describing how it works, and he kind of did kind of a sample little playthrough a little bit and everything. And from my personal exposure to the game, Bob, and again, this is just, my limited exposure to it and what I've seen other people say. It does seem like it's more than just pretty things. It's more than just a minis gimmick thing going on. There does seem to be some substantial game in this product, and it does have some legs and longevity. But again, I think, especially at its price point, it's one to definitely research and find out more about before taking the plunge, in my opinion anyway. But I think that on the bright side, yes, I think there is the potential there. And if you are interested, find out more about it because it might have what you're looking for. So I hope that helps. I got to reset my search already. There we go. Backing. All right. Bob follows up again already and says, I have backed some 20 games already on Kickstarter. And some good ones that he liked, include Burgle Brothers and Birds of a Feather. Oh, cool. And some bad ones. His example he gives is As a Chaotic Life. And some surprisingly entertaining ones, like Random Encounters. So there's really that's pretty a wide mix there. I mean, you were able to give some examples of good ones and bad ones and surprisingly entertaining ones. And of course, all of them off of Kickstarter, which makes me wonder, now that you have 20 games that you've bought off Kickstarter, and you have this wide range of responses that you've had to them. Sorry, there's very loud bloops going on today. Try to make that less bloopy. So what I'm wondering, how does the experience with the good, bad, and surprising games that you've bought off Kickstarter, how does that compare to games that you've just bought at your friendly local game store or online at a game shop? Is it the same ratio of good versus bad games? Or is Kickstarter, through its very nature, prone to have more bad games or prone to have more good games due to the crowd-sourcing nature of it? Any follow-up on that would be very interesting to see. How do Kickstarter's ratio of good to bad compare to what you've bought just at your only friendly local game store? And Bob doesn't have to be the only one to answer that question. I'd love to know what anyone else has to say. Someone else who has something to say is Mike Jones. No, really. And Mike Jones, no, really, mentions, and this is coming from someone who counts amongst his favorite games at least 8 Warhammer 40K titles and 4 Arkham Files ones. He made a typo in his hashtag on his previous post and it didn't highlight, but I found it. Let me back up. Mike Jones, no really, starts off by saying, Kingdom Death Monster isn't something I'm not backing due to the game. I'm not backing it due to it not really needing to be backed and its size and how dark the subject matter is. This is common for someone who counts amongst his favorite games at least 8 Warhammer 40K titles and 4 Arkham Files ones. It's the bloopy bloop show, if that's coming across. That is a really interesting point there, Mike. One that, boy, I don't know how I think about, I don't know how I feel about that, but I can totally see what you're saying. The point that sticks out to me the most is that where you say the reason that you're not backing Kingdom Death Monster has nothing to do with the game. It's just that its Kickstarter is so successful at this point that you don't feel that it really needs your backing anymore. That is interesting. I've seen both sides of the fence from the fundraising arena. And I've seen where some Kickstarters, I've actually seen some Kickstarters where people will back it to help it hit its threshold. And then once it hits its target, they'll pull their funds. So like they maybe they changed their mind, or maybe they had no intention of actually sticking with it in the first place. But I've seen where this artificial inflation in what it raises to help, quote unquote, help the fundraiser happens. And then once it hits that point or gets close to the end of the campaign, all of these pledges start being pulled from it. And I've seen several fundraising project managers start to kind of freak out from this. What am I doing wrong? Why is everyone leaving? and it can be due to that. So, again, that is people who back it to try and help it reach its threshold, or say, oh, it doesn't need me anymore. I'm just going to pull it and put my money elsewhere. You're saying, though, that you're not backing it in the first place, which I guess, all things considered, while I'm sure any fundraiser would like to have the funds available, donated to it, I think that's probably, from my point of view, if I was running a fundraiser, that is probably the preferable approach than putting in your donation and then pulling it once you see that it's going to be successful, because that can cause just as many logistical problems as having it not backed in the first place. So that's a really interesting point there, Mike. Let's see here. Okay, let's continue on. Let's try and hammer out a few of these, as we are about a third of the way through the show, and there's a couple more talking points to get to here. So let's see if the conversation goes that way. Oh no! Who told me last week the best way to pronounce or say their name, and it's been a week, I've totally forgot. So was it Fran? Anyway, FSZKVF Physisk, who I'm glad to see back in the show, comments on it saying, I wanted to buy the Plague Inc. game when it was on Kickstarter, but I didn't have the money at the time. So I suppose that an IP that I like and a seemingly serious company behind it is what attracted me to it, or is what attracts me to Kickstarters. An IP that I like and a seemingly serious company behind it. Both very important, valid points, I think. Points that I think are becoming more important as Kickstarter continues to mature as a marketing sales platform. Definitely agree with that. Toyota mentions new mechanics and awesome presentation entice me to buy Kickstarters, and stretch goals that make it worth my dollar, as the CDN, I believe that's the Canadian, no, the CDN sucks right now. Maybe that is the Canadian dollar. You have to, since I'm in America and I have the American bubble, if it's not American, I'm not sure what it's referring to. But anyway, the CDN sucks right now. I think that is the important takeaway here. Oh no, the more important takeaway here is new mechanics and awesome presentation. So what you're looking for in a Kickstarter is kind of the opposite of what it seems a lot of Kickstarters do, in that you are not looking for just pretty and neat components. You're looking for innovation in terms of new mechanics, and the presentation and the stretch goals then are kind of secondary. I think that Kickstarter has a lot of potential for introducing new mechanisms, and I hope that it lives up to this potential as it goes along. Luca doesn't have the hashtag, but he says, "Hey, Chaz!" Hey, Luca! There we go. Mike Jones continues with another comment that says, what has been making me spend my dough are the Eldritch Horror expansions, legendary expansions, and the new Arkham Files game, as well as a TCG on the computer named Chronicle RuneScape Legends. It's a really cool fusion of board game and TCG. A lot of expansions there. Now that is another thing, another item of discussion, which could be a completely dedicated upcoming episode, because I have noticed that sometimes when I have my monthly budget of my monthly entertainment budget, and I turn to my local board game industry to find out what to spend my little fun money budget on, I've noticed that there have been months where everything is taken up just by an expansion for an existing game, and that's a lot of expansions and a lot of games to keep up on. And it's almost got to the point where it's like, what do I cut out? But again, that is such a meaty topic in and of itself. And in fact, that's a really good one. That one, I'm going to put that aside as well, and hopefully remember when I come back to this, what we're going to do. In fact, what I am going to do is I'm going to pull up on my little note thingy here for my little idea pad. Let's see, Mike. Note, rip off Mike Jones' no really good idea for an episode and make one about expansions and whether there's too many expansions to keep up on and if that's a bad thing, and then completely forget to give Mike Jones the credit for it during the episode. End. There we go. All right. It's in the memory bank. Let's continue on, though. Toyota mentions some Kickstarters are the only way to get things that are included in games. Cool Mini or Not is the biggest culprit of this. And yes, I hate that. I am in the camp that believes it would be a fantastic idea, and I don't think it would hurt anything to go ahead and have your Kickstarter exclusives. But don't have them be exclusive forever. Maybe have it exclusive for 6 months or a year or what have you. 3 months, a day and a half. I don't know. But all of those little extra figures and expansions and extra cards and awesome things, maybe allow that after a certain amount of time, you're going to package those and sell them to everyone else who wasn't available to do the Kickstarter. I would love that if every Kickstarter that had exclusives would eventually make those exclusives publicly available for everyone else to buy. Some people say, then it is no longer exclusive. To which I reply, that's true, but does it really make that big of a difference in the long run? And maybe these people say, yes, I want to have this all to myself, to which I would reply, well, that is somewhat rude, because we like stuff too, just because we weren't there in time. And then they put their arm around my shoulder and try to console me, but at that point it is too late because I have moved on to the next comment, which is from Kabuki Kid, who mentions, the last Kickstarter, maybe this is in follow-up to where we left off. The last Kickstarter I put a decent amount of money into was Seventh Continent. Ooh, cool. Seventh Continent looks really fun, and I even kicked it with all of the trimmings. I did do a lot of research on it, though, before committing to it. All right. And Kabuki Kid continues, research is key to me. Either that or I need to have played the game first, which obviously can be difficult with Kickstarter. All right, we're about at the halfway point here in our conversation, and I'm just looking. I am almost caught up on the comments, so I'm going to do a little mini lightning round, and I'm going to catch up on the comments, and then we're going to. Maybe I wasn't as caught up as I thought I was. Wow, nope, the comments jumped and revealed about 3 times as many comments as I thought there were. So, oops. So I'm going to try and find where I just left off. But what I wanted to do real quick is I wanted to also ask, I wanted to add another layer to the conversation here, because I wanted to find out, because as you all know, I'm petty and jealous. So I want to know, this Kickstarter here, raising it $7.2 million. What is it about these Kickstarters that get the attention and the pledges that they do? Now, I was thinking, well, perhaps there is a common thought that if you want to have a successful board game Kickstarter campaign, just include miniatures in it. You could have an abstract strategy game like Checkers 2016. But if you put minis in Checkers 2016, big money. This can be partly evidenced by one of the original huge board game related Kickstarters that was from a while ago. Let me get my notes out of my way here. Hi, notes. Yeah. Excuse me. Thank you, notes. Reaper Bones, which was from July 2012. Where'd you go? A little information about Reaper Bones. Reaper Bones was this set of miniatures, which we should be able to find some pictures of the actual. There's no pictures of the actual miniatures on this. That's well planned. And I'm not going to play the videos because that will kill my bandwidth and lag out the show. But the Reaper miniatures were a whole bunch of miniatures. And it was at the time, one of the most successful board game related Kickstarters. 17,744 backers raised $3.4 million. No game, just for a large, very large collection of miniatures. And when I've talked about how I have backed a few Kickstarter campaigns, Reaper Bones, the original one, their first one, Reaper Bones is one of the Kickstarters actually that I backed as well. And I got my Reaper Bones miniatures and they are really, really cool. And since then, we've continued to see different Kickstarter campaigns with miniatures come along and raise a lot of money. And again, it kind of got to the point where it seemed like if you wanted to have a successful board game Kickstarter, you had, your odds of success were amplified exponentially if you included miniatures. And then, just last year or so, came along Exploding Kittens. Now, Exploding Kittens is kind of the antithesis of what we've seen in successful Kickstarters before. Not a huge grandiose game like Kingdom Death Monster. Not reliant on miniatures at all because it's a card game like Reaper and other things. And Cool Mini or Not games or anything like this. Exploding Kittens is a ridiculous little card game about kittens and explosions and laser beams and sometimes goats. Excuse me. It had nearly 220,000 people who backed it. I'll let that just chew on that for just a minute. Nearly 220,000 people backed this, and they raised, with their little card game, they raised over $8.7 million. And I want to put that in perspective a little bit. Kingdom Death Monster has raised over $7 million, but Kingdom Death Monster's price point for entry is $250. Exploding Kittens' price point for entry is $20. So less than 1/10 the amount of Kingdom Death Monster's price, and the amount of response that they got is just mind-bogglingly huge. There we go. So what caused Exploding Kittens to have the success that it did, with it not being from an established board game production, no previous board game production experience, no minis, not an elaborate huge game at all? Well, one thing that made, I think, the primary thing that led to Exploding Kittens is one thing. It was created by the developer of the online comic, The Oatmeal. So Exploding Kittens had the vast success and popularity of The Oatmeal behind it and all of its reader base. So even though it wasn't an established board game company, obviously it had an established viewership already. I think a lot of that could be a parallel to, even though it wasn't on Kickstarter, it was just sold direct, but a lot of that existing customer base being used to fuel the success of your board game product, some parallels from Exploding Kittens can be drawn as well to the recent Mechs versus Minions by Riot Games, where they had the League of Legends, I don't want to say captive audience, but they had the existing audience for League of Legends, and their board game, came out and had this pre-existing audience available to get excited about it. And that, though, is, I think, what is even more important, is whether it's a huge game, a new company, existing company, someone with a different audience, or an already existing board game audience, miniatures or not, I think what really is going to result in a successful Kickstarter and get people to do the research and get interested in it and pledge behind it is going to be somehow capturing people's imagination. And miniatures with really good sculpts are a really good way to capture people's imagination. online comic that's been around for a long time is a really good way to capture people's imagination, especially when you take something absurd like Exploding Kittens and people know your humor from the comics that you've made, and you can they'll see, oh, I see where you're going with this. This is going to be wacky and weird and funny. You've captured their imagination there. And the Reaper miniatures as well, again, the really good sculpt stuff, that didn't even have a game associated with it, but all the things that you think that you can do with it, there you go. All right, let me go back and start catching up on the comments here, and we'll see where the conversation goes from here. All right, and I apologize. The comments jumped really bad right when I left off. I think I found where we left off, which is from Toyota, who mentions some Kickstarters are the only way to get things that are included in... Oh, wait, we just meant that. They're included in the games, Cool Mini or Not being the biggest culprit of this. Okay, so I did find where I left off. Thank you very much. Here we go. Mike Jones mentions again specifically about Kingdom Death Monster. He picks up the conversation again by saying the only thing that I think really clicked with Kingdom Death Monster was its unavailability and the dreaded hype train. Now, some games on Kickstarter and things, and the ones that I've covered already, it seems like the hype is there, and then the Kickstarter backing happens because of that hype. But in other times, I think, at least with the original Kingdom Death Monster, it was the performance it was having on Kickstarter was there first, and that led to the hype instead of the other way around. And I think it's something that can go both ways. But correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I missed out on the hype about it. But it is interesting sometimes to see where the hype leads to people backing it, and sometimes people backing it and the performance it's having there leads to the hype, and it creates this nice little vicious circle that feeds on itself. Bob asks or states, I thought that Kingdom Death Monster was just run by one man. I don't know about one man, especially now it's a team, but I know it's at the very least a very small group. And it was probably the brainchild of one man. He probably has some helpers at least. But I know it was at least started by a very, very small group. Let's Grow Together asks, is Kingdom Death Monster worth it? And since it had the hashtag on it, it got highlighted, and I highlighted. I was talking just before the show started. I was talking to my wife about Kingdom Death Monster and its $250 price point, and how many people have grabbed that. And the question came up: is Kingdom Death Monster worth it? My official answer to that is it's different for everybody. If you are someone who feels that you are going to get your money's worth out of Kingdom Death Monster or any game that you buy, that's all that matters in determining whether it's worth it. The perception of value is such a personal and varied thing. It's something that I find just fascinating, especially with how online retailers versus friendly local game stores, local retailers operate. Just finding out, is the value of this game worth it to me to spend a little bit more to get it right now in town? Or is the value of this game worth it for me to pay a little bit less, but wait like a week for it to be delivered? That trade-off always fascinates me. So anyway, that's the long answer to your question. The short answer is Kingdom Death Monster worth it? Is up to you. So, okay, let's continue on. Toyota mentions the thing with Kingdom Death Monster to get all in, everything is like $1,300. So it's just, and he says, what's the word I'm looking for? Insane. It is interesting to see that the buy-in for it is such a higher price point, and it is not deterring people from backing it. Very, very interesting. Bob mentions, I think Paco Game is worth a lot more. Is a lot more worth it dollar-wise. And Paco Game is the set of like 6 or so little games that are the size of packs of like spearmint gum that you'd get down at the grocery store. Very small, narrow, rectangular boxes. And hey, that's a game in there. And they come in like a 6-pack with 6 different games. That is also probably the opposite end of the spectrum as Kingdom Death Monster, I would think. Quite the different gaming experience and package in that. And there's some awesome little games in Pack a Game as well. The small nature of it did not diminish the playability of some of those games. So that's cool. All right. Kabuki Benjamin mentions that he's not interested in backing Kingdom Death Monster. Benjamin, I'd like to know, is it the price point? Is it the subject matter? Because it is kind of dark. I wouldn't have it out around my daughter, who's 9. Just because of the dark tone of the subject matter. So price point, subject matter, mechanisms, other. Let me know in the chat as we go. Kabuki Kid mentions, I believe that the base game of Kingdom Death Monster is due in like a year. So it is all of the extra stuff that won't be sent until 2020. Oh, okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. Because I was thinking, wow, waiting 4 years for a game really seems like a very long projection to make an investment in. So there you go. Okay. So is game in a year and the extra stuff until 2020 is a possibility. All right. And also some more information on Kingdom Death Monster. It's mentioned Kingdom Death Monster is a campaign-style game, and some claim it is as close to an RPG in a board game that they have ever played. And I think that RPG element has a very strong pull to it. So thank you for the additional kind of information on the game. Mike Jones points out the hype train again. So we'll continue chugging into our hype train station here. Toyota mentions, that's the thing with Kingdom Death Monster. I could get tons of games for the price of backing just this one game. And that's a really good point. Where do you put your board gaming budget? Like when I was talking about expansions and stuff like that. But yeah, with Kingdom Death Monster, that's at least several months worth of games to a lot of people there, at least for the one. Again, is it worth doing? Well, that's up to every individual person. But it is surprising, how much bang for your buck you're getting. Now, it does seem like the price of board games in general this past year have the average price of a game has risen. And to me, it seems like it. Wonder what caused that. But in general, it does seem like the price of everything is going up. And whether that's the natural effect of the market or artificial outside forces causing that, who's to say? But it is something that maybe is making Kingdom Death Monster's price point more palatable. I'm not sure. So let's continue. Sindane joins us to mention, I like supporting Kickstarters for little projects that won't make it into stores. If it's making millions or it's just a fancy pre-order, then I don't bother. Oh, very good point there, Sindane. So Sindane is looking into Kickstarter for something unique, something that isn't going to be found anywhere else. And I think that that's one of Kickstarter's really big strengths. And that's also what lures me to Kickstarter myself, too, lots of times, is things right in that same wheelhouse. Mike Jones asks, do you think a lot of the backers were backers of the original game? That's a good question. The original game had 5,000 backers, and the new one has 14, so almost 3 times as many. And in my gut, I reserve the right to be completely wrong, but in my gut, I'm thinking that the 1.5, maybe a 30% to 40% overlap of people that bought the first one, because maybe they're getting another one to flesh it out or share with a friend or something. But even if everyone who bought the first one buys the second, it is still Now, nearly 9 to 10,000 more people that never had the first one are buying the second. So even if it is a lot of the same backers, there's so many more that are being introduced to it too. So we know it's not the same old people. We know it's hitting new people who are interested in it. Sarah mentions the sculpts are incredible in Kingdom Death Monster and got my attention for sure. But the game requires an intersection of miniature lovers with a taste for the disturbing and for luxury. They know their audience. So niche. Very good point there. I like that. The intersection of miniatures with a taste for the disturbing and for luxury. Yes, they definitely created the Venn diagram, whatever, found that overlap, and that is the direction they have run towards with full momentum. And it's working for them, which makes sense because when you know your audience and you know your niche and you go to serve that, they say the narrower your niche, the more possibility for success you will have instead of trying to be everything to everyone. So that's, thank you for that very interesting point there, Sarah. Kabuki Kid mentions, a proven company on Kickstarter is definitely a huge plus towards backing new games from them. Okay, so that does have a lot of weight in your purchase decision. Very good. Physisk, and again I apologize, mentions, I just bought $100 worth of stuff on Cool Stuff Inc. to use the free shipping that triggers at $100. And ended up paying $90 extra on taxes and storage to bring it home because Fisk doesn't live in the United States. Wow. That was a throwback. Also mentions, this is a throwback to 2 episodes ago. That's insane. That is what's insane. That the taxes and storage to ship it over to where you are, even with free shipping, is pretty much doubles the price of an order easily. That's nuts. I wonder how much of an effect that has on the price of core games and stuff, because I wonder if a lot of these games are printed overseas in other countries. So I wonder if that sort of price effect increases the amount of the core games themselves. And it makes kind of this another vicious circle where to get them over here and created costs money, and then get them sent out costs even more. But anyway, that's, if nothing else, that's a bummer. So let's continue on. We're nearly to the point with our lightning round, and it looks like the comments are getting away from me. I'm looking down my little scroll window, and I'm now about 2/3 of the way scrolled down. So let's continue on here. Mike Jones mentions, no, he mentions my previous point is not it. I don't mind paying big money in the name of beautiful minis that were designed specifically to be painted and where the modeling is part of the hobby. For example, also see GW, Games Workshop. Okay, so that's not necessarily a sticking point with preventing you from investing in a game. So there we go. I guess, yeah, Games Workshop kind of has built their whole business model on that very thing, haven't they? Like you mentioned. Toyota mentions, a company's history has a huge impact on whether I will back them. Perfect example is a company released a second Kickstarter after not having delivered on their first Kickstarter that was 1.5 years late. So company history and performance does have an impact, which I think is good. I would hope so. I'm of the camp that I hope previous performance and history goes into someone's decision to back a fundraising campaign when a company makes a subsequent one. So I'm hoping that you and I are not in the minority there with those opinions. Mike Jones mentions again, going back to Kingdom Death Monster, by the logic, Kingdom Death Monster wouldn't be this backed, considering he actually canceled the expansion that was promised to his original backers. The Lantern Festival, I think. I saw that while I was doing my research for this episode. I saw on the original Kingdom Death Monster... Oh, I guess I have it here. Hold on, let me bring it up. Whoops, wrong window. Right window. Let's move our little chat out of the way. Yes, I saw that in the updates. Lantern Festival canceled. At this moment, I have canceled Lantern Festival, which was November 5th. So was that because the contents of Lantern Festival are moved to the version 1.5? Or was it some other logistical problem? I don't know, because I don't know that enough about Kingdom Death Monster in and of itself. But yes, there was an expansion or an additional product called the Lantern Festival, which was canceled within the last month or so. But it hasn't had an effect on their new Kickstarter for version 1.5. And it could be that either people don't know or weren't aware of it, or it could be, and again, I don't know enough about Kingdom Death Monster. I'm just thinking, if I was in these shoes, if the people creating Kingdom Death Monster communicated frequently and with a lot of information to their backers about this, maybe this has been something that wasn't just out of the blue. If it was something that had been discussed for a long time, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to cancel this, and this is why. I know that stuff like that level of communication can have a very good impact, lead to a lot of goodwill with your customers, even if it's something that they don't necessarily want to hear. But all right, let's see. Let's see. Benjamin also asks, isn't the whole point of Kickstarter to back someone? Back someone that isn't a big company and an experienced publisher? Well, that's a whole big philosophical can of worms right there. I believe maybe in spirit, that's definitely maybe how Kickstarter began. But I know a lot of large companies have discovered its potential to help almost be a pre-order system. And that's a whole area of philosophical debate of whether big companies that are already established should stay off of Kickstarter to let it be just focusing on the little guys that aren't experienced publishers. And I don't know exactly what Kickstarter's opinion on the topic is. I mean, they obviously haven't kicked anyone off saying, hey, you're too big to use Kickstarter. So the people running the website don't necessarily seem to have a problem with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that maybe in the board game community, maybe it's outside the spirit of what a lot of us would like to see Kickstarter used for, but that doesn't make any one of those people necessarily correct. So there you go. Another kind of middle of the road answer there, because I think Kickstarter and the way it is used is something that is still evolving and is going to continue to evolve. And I think over time we'll see that kind of those things solidify. But I don't think we're there yet. I think there's a lot more evolution that's going to happen on Kickstarter. All right, Kabuki Kid continues, calls back to my earlier question and mentions, I did have a couple of Kickstarter projects that just evaporated. So I never got anything from them. So now, yes, I am very wary. Makes sense, because one of the things that kind of cooled me on backing things on Kickstarter was more than one project in a row being delayed by like at least a year or so. And that was really frustrating. And I decided I would just obtain some of these things a different way. All right, we're in the lightning round, so let's continue. How the Gods Chill won. So apparently there's multiple of you, but How the Gods Chill won mentions, as someone who doesn't have a huge budget, Tabletop Simulator mixed with YouTube playthroughs have been a godsend for me. Has it been something that has changed the way that you back things on Kickstarter, or what games just in general you invest in? And has it allowed you to be happier with the games that you have invested in, and the games that you've tested on Tabletop Simulator? Have those been ones that you've actually ended up buying, or has Tabletop Simulator replaced the need for you to buy the physical versions? Again, probably won't get to that, the answer to that as we go through, but maybe next time, or that might be the topic of a future episode. How that affects the purchasing habits there? And is the board game industry cannibalizing itself? Okay. Must not rabbit trail. Must continue with our current chat. Which continues with Bob, who mentions, I still think board gaming is a cheap hobby. And you can go in with as little as you want or as much as you want, depending on your disposable income. And there are lots of people, continues Bob, lots of people with huge disposable income, apparently. Unless, well, Bob, it's also possible that people just have credit cards and go in debt. That's a trap that some people have fallen into. And I have myself at one point in my life, and fortunately was able to claw my way out of that. But it is true. That is one of the things that is really great about board gaming, is that there are lots of affordable, cheap, inexpensive options. You have a wide variety, and a lot of those inexpensive options, like Paco Games that we just mentioned earlier, can give you a lot of gameplay for a very small monetary investment. And that is really a cool thing about our hobby, is that amount of variety in it. But if someone does have the disposable income, no skin, it shouldn't be any skin off our nose if they decide to invest in something like Kingdom Death Monster, because if that's what someone wants to invest in and they have the means to do it, that's the whole reason. That's why money exists, is to be able to get the things you need, and then also get those creature comforts if that's what you're you wanting to do. So, but it is the point is, though, yes, very nice that we have such a variety in our hobby. Let's continue on. Pith's Attic comes back to us to mention even experienced publishers can leave quite the mess. It took just look at the Takedo Collector's Edition. 2 years later, and people are still waiting for the art books or even their copy of the game. Boy, howdy, I cannot even imagine the frustration level with that. And just full disclosure, I work with a company that works with the company that published, that designed Takedo, the collector's edition. So I've been sucked into that. So I'm not going to go too much into detail about anything, but I have seen frustration about that and other Kickstarters. And man, I've experienced my own, no delays, like that type of delay. But yeah, that is extremely frustrating, and just something that you wish you could just fix instead of having to wait on people. All right, Meeple Geek. It's going to lift my spirits with this comment. Meeple Geek, I hope, says, I think it's important to be careful when pledging multiple games. For example, I backed the Takedo... Oh no, it's Takedo again. I backed the Takedo Deluxe version for 2 games by adding 1 additional, and Passport Games has yet to send me my second. That is a really good point. Make sure, though, that if you have a question about that, one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you, which I'm sure you've done already, is to contact the publishers through their website. Get on their radar, because sometimes Kickstarter backers, for one reason or not, you'll have multiple different departments, sometimes in different companies, sometimes in different countries, managing the fulfillment of some of these Kickstarters, especially large Kickstarters. And so sometimes through all of that paperwork from different languages and different countries, sometimes I would imagine that some backers can slip through the cracks. So if you feel like you have slipped through the cracks, contact those publishers immediately through their website and get back on their radar, because I can promise you that people are listening to those things and are wanting everybody to get their games, and oftentimes are just as angry and frustrated when the stuff that people have backed doesn't go out to them on time. Okay. Let's see here. We have like 1 minute left. So we're going to have the thing jump. Let's go to Bob, then Sasha, and then maybe one more. Bob mentions once again, calling back to a previous discussion. He says, Chaz, the mix, good versus bad, is slightly better in a friendly local game store. But I like to take the plunge and find the occasional gem. On Kickstarter. Kickstarter is more like an adventure. That's a good point. I guess I'm not. I don't have as much of an Indiana Jones gene in me as you do, Bob, because it's an adventure I don't go on as often as I used to. But I do like the analogy of Kickstarter being more of an adventure. I like that. And Sasha mentions joins us again to mention that I rarely back board games. I tend to back RPGs and video games more often. I usually only back board games if they offer great deals, are niche games I really want to have, or games that I have the feeling would be hard to get where I am here in Germany. And then one more little comment from Sasha. When looking through all the gaming Kickstarters, I always wondered who's stupid enough to back all of those poker decks. And now I know the answer. It's me. Well, there you go. It's always surprising, isn't it, how you wonder who would get this thing until you find an aspect of it that intrigues you, and then you realize, oh, I'm one of the people that would get this thing. And then you get the thing, and then you wonder, how did I ever live without this thing? Well, one thing, though, that we're going to have to live without is the rest of the comments in the chat, because we're out of time for this episode, so we got to wrap things up. But, wow. I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to join us on this episode. I'm always excited how these episodes go. I have always my notes, but I've been trying to leave my notes to be as flexible that so that we can just see where the conversation goes on its own and have an organic conversation. And this was definitely one where I turned a lot of it over to the audience to see where we went, and it worked. So I really appreciate everyone who took the time to come by. And while you're here, feel free to continue stopping by the Dice Tower and Pair of Dice Paradise YouTube channels for more board game news and reviews and commentary just like this show right here. And while you're at it, feel free to stop by our Facebook and possibly even Twitter as well to continue the conversations about board games and board game related media, content, and whatnot. Until you do those, and until our next episode, I've been Chaz Marler, your host for the Metagame, and I will see you guys again soon. Take care.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.